When a disciple asked how to calm the mind when we have disturbing thoughts, and God replied, this simple exchange opens up one of the most profound spiritual truths about human life. The question of calming the mind has been asked by seekers, saints, philosophers, and ordinary people throughout history, because the mind is the center of both peace and chaos. It creates heaven and hell within the same person. When disturbing thoughts arise, they pull us into anxiety, fear, guilt, and restlessness. The disciples' question is not only spiritual but deeply human. It comes from the heart of anyone who has ever struggled with the noise of their own mind. The first thing to understand is that the mind is not your enemy. It is a tool, an instrument that God or existence has given you to function in the world. But over time, we become identified with it. The mind produces thousands of thoughts every day. Memories, plans, fears, judgments, desires, and instead of watching them, we start believing them, reacting to them, and suffering because of them. The problem begins when we forget that we are the observer and not the mind itself. God's reply to such a question would likely not be to suppress the thoughts, but to change our relationship with them. The more you fight disturbing thoughts, the stronger they become. Because what you resist persists. The energy you give to resisting them feeds them. The way to calm the mind is not by battling with thoughts, but by witnessing them silently, without judgment. Imagine sitting by the side of a river, watching the water flow. The river may carry flowers, leaves, or even dirt and debris, but you remain a witness. You don't jump into the water to remove the dirt. You let it pass. Similarly, thoughts, whether peaceful or disturbing, are like that river. You are not the water. You are the sky reflected in it. When God replies, he might say, "Be still and know that you are not your thoughts." Disturbing thoughts lose their power when you stop identifying with them. The calmness you seek is not the absence of thoughts. It is the space that exists before, during, and after thoughts. That space is your true nature, your consciousness. Many people think calming the mind means making it blank or thoughtless, but that is not true calmness. Real peace is not the suppression of movement. It is the understanding of it. Just as the ocean remains deep and undisturbed even when waves form on the surface, your awareness remains still even when the mind is active. When you recognize that, disturbing thoughts no longer frighten you. They come and go like clouds in the sky, and you, the sky, remain vast and untouched. God's message here would be that the more you run away from your mind, the more it chases you. But if you sit with awareness and observe, the chase ends. The disciples' question also reveals an assumption, that the mind can be controlled directly. But control is an illusion. The mind cannot be tamed by force. It can only be understood through awareness. If you try to command it to be calm, it becomes even more agitated, because you are adding another layer of resistance. True calmness arises when you let go of control. Meditation is not a technique to control the mind, but a way to observe it without attachment. As you watch the flow of thoughts, you begin to see their impermanence. Every thought comes and goes. None stays forever. What remains constant is the watcher. This realization is the door to peace. Disturbing thoughts often arise from fear, guilt, desire, and attachment. The mind clings to the past and worries about the future. But God exists only in the present moment. So when he replies, his answer is a call to come back to the now. Be here in this moment, he might say. The past is a shadow and the future is a dream. Only this moment is real. When you bring your attention fully to the present, thoughts lose their grip because they feed on time. They need the past to sustain regret and the future to sustain anxiety. The present is free from both. By practicing mindfulness, simply being aware of your breath, your sensations, your surroundings, you reconnect with the peace that is always there. The disciple might ask again, "But Lord, my mind is too strong. The thoughts are too painful." And God would smile and reply, "Then let them be. Watch them with love." The secret is compassion toward your own mind. Instead of labeling thoughts as good or bad, just observe them with gentleness. The moment you bring compassion into awareness, transformation begins. The storm of thoughts gradually settles. Not because you forced it to, but because you allowed it to exhaust itself. Every storm passes, every emotion fades. What remains is the stillness of your being. In that stillness, God's presence can be felt, not as a distant deity, but as the peace within you. When we speak of calming the mind, we must also understand that the mind's nature is movement. Just as wind must blow, the mind must think. So the goal is not to make it motionless, but to make yourself unshaken by its motion. You can sit in silence and watch thoughts appear and disappear like scenes in a movie. You are the screen on which they play, but the screen itself is unaffected. Disturbing thoughts are part of life. They come to teach you about your attachments, fears, and unhealed emotions. Each thought is an opportunity to know yourself better. God's reply, in this sense, is not about escape, but about awakening, an invitation to become conscious of who you truly are beyond the mind. There is also a practical dimension to calming the mind. Physical relaxation, conscious breathing, and prayer are powerful aids. When you breathe deeply, you bring oxygen to the body and send a message of peace to the nervous system. When you pray, not as a request but as a surrender, you release control. Thy will be done is the essence of letting go. Faith and surrender are antidotes to mental disturbance, because they shift your focus from "I must control everything" to "I trust the divine order." The mind becomes restless when it feels it must solve everything alone. When you hand over your burdens to God, even symbolically, you free yourself from that illusion of control. God's answer may also carry a reminder that disturbing thoughts are not punishments but teachers. They reveal where you are still attached or afraid. Instead of cursing them, thank them. They are like mirrors showing you what needs healing. If anger arises, look at it with awareness and ask, what is it trying to tell me? If fear arises, hold it in the light of love. The mind calms down when it is understood, not when it is condemned. Every thought longs to be seen and accepted. In this acceptance, transformation happens naturally. Over time, as the disciple practices this awareness, a shift occurs. The same thoughts that once caused suffering now seem harmless, even amusing. You begin to see that the mind is like a playful child, always busy, always talking, but essentially innocent. You no longer get lost in its stories. You can let it speak without believing it. This distance is freedom. In that freedom, silence blooms. Not forced silence, but natural peace. That is what God means when He says, "Be still." Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the absence of identification. It is the state where you are fully awake, yet untouched. In the modern world, where distractions are endless and mental noise is constant, this teaching becomes even more valuable. Every time you check your phone, worry about your future, or compare yourself with others, you feed the restless mind. To calm it, you must withdraw attention from these sources of noise and return to simplicity. Spend time in nature, sit quietly for a few minutes each day, breathe consciously, or write down your thoughts without judgment. Slowly, you will see that peace is not something you achieve. It is something you uncover. It was always there beneath the clutter of thoughts. Ultimately, calming the mind is not about doing, but about being. It is a process of remembering who you are, a consciousness beyond thought, emotion, and form. The disciple's question represents every seeker's longing for that remembrance. And God's reply, in its divine simplicity, says, "You cannot calm the mind by fighting it. You can only calm it by understanding that you are not it." This realization is liberation. Once you see this truth, disturbing thoughts lose their power, and the peace of God shines through you naturally, like sunlight breaking through the clouds. The mind becomes a servant, not a master, and you become what you always were: pure awareness, calm, infinite, and free.